everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Pebble. And you may just recognize this striking gentleman. If you don't, it is Daniel from across the way. And though the song isn't about him, if you're hearing Elton John in your ears, that's okay. Anyways, Daniel is returned to talk with us, and today we're going to tackle a little bit different of a topic, a little heavier one, but we're going to do it positively. Daniel and I sometimes talk off record because we just like to chat when we're on Zooms. And I noticed that he listed a great deal of his heritage on his bio. And if you'd like to check him out, he has a very interesting and long ethnic heritage listed. So we started chatting, and I said, I think you should talk about this on my show because no, we don't really like to talk about race and different ethnicity, but we need to, and especially from a positive place, because that's where we're at, right? The Pebble is a positive place. So I've spoken a lot for someone who's supposed to be letting Daniel talk. So, and love, why don't you talk a bit about what we discussed and your heritage, and I'll shut up now.
One of the things I've always said that I'm very, very proud to be mixed race. And growing up in the UK, I've had the sort of the fortune of, many, many different cultures, being exposed to sort of the Chinese culture, as well as the West Indian. Having grandparents that came from Southeast Asia, my granddad, who came from Burma, he was also part Scottish as well, which is where one of my surnames comes from. So bit of a mixed bag. And my grandma, who was Chinese and spent a great deal of her life in this country, but when she was younger, she was in Singapore. That's where she met my granddad, and they came over to, lovely England, and the rest is history. But I've always been really proud of the fact that, I've had all these sort of cultures that I've been exposed to, sort of going to Chinatown, being quite happy one day, eating like a fire, and then the next day eating char kway teow. I love all that. And, I think I've had sort of quite a big passion for sort of like food because of what I was used to when I was younger. I like to think of myself as being quite cultured anyway. But I always used to love it when we were in school, and I'd bring in all these like things like Vitasoy drinks, and stuff that people had never heard of before. Kind of like, oh, what's this? What's this? What's this? I loved all that, and I still love it now. I'm very Eastern, I think, in my sort of my mindset, the kind of things that I like, the anime, obviously, and
Gotta get that in.
I've got to get that in. I've always, you know me. I'm always going to shoehorn that in somehow. But it does fit in with like culture, and the sorts of things. I'm very, very Eastern, in pretty much everything that I do. And I think even though that I'm living in the UK, and I born and raised here, um, I feel sort of more Asian, definitely. And I think also when I went to Singapore, because that's where my grandparents sort of originated from when when they were younger, and I felt like, this can sound so corny, but I felt like something that was missing, which I didn't even realize was missing, just kind of all sort of slotted into place.
No,
Um,
I don't
and
think that's corny at all. I
Yeah, well, the thing is, when I went, I was a bit reticent about going in the beginning because I was like, I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, and all of that. And I loved it so much that I didn't actually want to come home. And I was actually in tears on the plane on the way home. And like every single time, like literally, I've been quite lucky to go quite a few times in several years. And from the minute I set foot in Heathrow Airport to the minute we touched down at Changi Airport, I'd be in floods of tears. My mum would just be like rolling her eyes. But it everything kind of made sense, and now I watch all their local dramas. I was actually really fortunate to meet some of the local actors. And they were probably thinking, who's this person from like England who knows who we are and and all of that. But I absolutely love that. Kind of like how, when you were saying about you were so surprised that somebody in England knew who you were. And I was like, well, yeah, because
Indeed.
like I said before, ATV released those dubs here, so that's how we got exposed to it, And I always say, I'm really fortunate that, my grandparents were from Singapore because I probably would have gone maybe at some point, but I don't think it would have been as soon as it has been, And I was having all these really surreal moments when I was meeting some of these local actors and kind of going, "Wow, if I wasn't from Singapore, this wouldn't actually be happening right now."
Right.
So I reflect a lot on things, and I actually thought, this is even though I obviously wasn't born there, it felt like home to me. It really and it still does, and like I said before, everything kind of just made sense. So I'm very, very proud of being sort of, mixed race of sort of, West Indian and also Asian sort of heritage, and I think more people should sort of embrace, those sorts of elements of themselves, you know. There's so many people, like I think what you were saying as well, you've kind of got European ancestry as well. And it like you said, it's something to be celebrated, and completely embraced. And I've had really, really positive experiences. I can't really say that I've had any sorts of like negative ones. I can quite happily go to, any part of the country and just feel like like a human being. But I'm probably one of, the sorts of fortunate ones that just kind of sees people, and they just see me as a person as well. I do appreciate that's not, necessarily the same for everybody. But I can only speak on my experience, and like I said, I know that I'm very, very fortunate. You used to sometimes get sort of couple of like curious, curious looks when I was younger. I remember being in Chinatown one day, and this guy kind of just like properly stared and stared, but it was like in a curious way. And then eventually he said, "You're Chinese," and I was just like, "Yeah." And it was really flattering that he could tell, and that was sort of a really sort of heartwarming moment. It's kind of like, oh, these are my people as well, as well as the my family members in on the West Indian side, as well as the family members I've got in Singapore, as well as the family members I've got here. Quite a lot of my family on my mum's side actually emigrated over here over the years. And sometimes I make a bit of a joke of it. I think, are you crazy? You came from like really hot Singapore to come here, to the UK. But, back then as well, also opportunities, Singapore as it is now is not how when my grandparents were there. It's obviously progressed so much within a relatively short period of time. So the Singapore that I know is obviously not the Singapore that they were used to.
Right.
So I can understand that opportunities were here and they took them, and I also think as well, I probably wouldn't look how I do if they hadn't come over and my mum hadn't been born here, and she hadn't met my dad, and and all of that as well. So it's all kind of interlinked, isn't it? Really, you just kind of think to yourself, well, if this hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be here, or I'd look completely different, and I do sometimes think about that actually. But I do think that I'm really, really happy with um, you know, with who I am and where I've come from. And like I say, that I think that's reflected in the sorts of interest that I have, sort of mainly anime, but also sort of like, Singaporean dramas. You know, my mum always likes to say the Japanese influence comes from my dad. She said, your dad was like completely obsessed with like Japan, and you get that from him and all of that. And I probably do. I
Which is
probably do.
interesting because he's not from the Asian side.
No, exactly. And he actually came over when he was in his teens, and from Guyana, and he was here, for many, many, many years, and it's interesting to kind of see sort of like from their point of view, obviously, opportunities that were here, because it's so easy now to kind of go, oh, the weather there's amazing, why,
Right.
why come over here? But, looking from their, perspective, you know, the
World's much
opportunities that
more
they have.
open now than it
Yeah,
was
exactly, exactly. And my grandparents made a life for themselves here, in the UK, and they were here for a very, very long time, and I absolutely loved going to visit them whenever I could, and having those summers, those lovely memories of going to their house and eating dal, and rice, and so many of these things. And whenever I see some of these like pages about Singapore like pop up on Facebook and all of that. I remember one post came up, and I literally almost burst into tears because the photo of the food was, I kid you not, it was almost exactly the same as what my granddad used to make. It was like rice and you know, um, yeah, the carrots and the broth and everything, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm gone.
it's like a time machine picture for you.
Yeah,
You were just
yeah,
ready. Oh,
that's
I
it.
can imagine.
But it
Food
was,
takes us back too, doesn't it? Like, I think food may be among of all the cultural things that will most hit you like emotionally, I think food
yeah,
is it. I have with my grandparents something that each of them, um, well, I've got one living grandmother, and then, memories. So I should say made with most of them, that if I were to smell that today, I'd be a puddle on the floor.
yeah,
Just, and, so I get that. I can imagine if you saw that, you would just be like, "Oh," you know, so
definitely,
I think
definitely.
food is the big tie-in, and especially if where you were raised with, grandparents around you that did keep their cultures alive through the food, that must have been very emotional.
Oh, definitely. And that's never really left me, and I kept, my grandma's bowls and things like that, and I still use them. And so I kind of feel like connected to her, even though, both my grandparents on my mum's side are no longer here. And it's just, it just kind of, I feel like they're still with me, you
Yeah,
know.
always,
And I
always.
love that. I absolutely love that. And they instilled so many sort of happy memories and so many sort of yeah, it just kind of evokes so many sorts of nostalgic feelings. And I've always kept that with me, always kept that with me. And to the extent that whenever I go to a new place, I need to find out where the local Chinese supermarket is, if there is one, or looking for my Lee Kum Kee brand sauces and all of that. I just love it. I just feel so sort of connected with the Chinese community. Um, that that's mostly what I've known when I've sort of been growing up. And I get in touch with the West Indian side as well. With my dad's side of the family as well. But I think when you're kind of mainly used to sort of who you're raised with,
Yeah.
I think that that does tend to have quite a heavy influence. Um, but I like the fact that I can draw upon all of these different cultures. I'm not just limited to just the one. I'm fortunate. I am so blessed. I really, really am.
It
Um,
sounds like your family, in encouraged you to embrace all of your different sides,
yeah,
that it wasn't like you had to choose one or the other,
no,
that they
no.
really did allow you to have all of those pieces of the puzzle, be complete for you.
Definitely, and I think in society, I think it should be more like that, rather than having to sort of subscribe to, a label, and saying, "Oh, you're this or you're that," and it's just like you should be free to kind of embrace who you really are and not what you think people, want you to be, and like you said, sort of having these sorts of dialogues to kind of open up a conversation
Yeah,
and learn
that's
from
what I
each
hope
other
for.
as well.
Because it's
To
something
definitely
that was positive for you
yeah,
being
I know,
you, and
yeah,
that's what
definitely.
I want here, is us being able to fully be able to be who we're supposed to be, and for you, that was positive, and
Oh God, yeah, definitely. I mean, living in Liverpool as well, it's such a sort of multicultural. I mean, it's a port city, so historically, it's always been, a melting pot of different cultures. It's actually home to the oldest Chinese community in the world, I believe. So, it's it kind of makes sense to kind of be here.
yeah,
Um, you know, um, so I love that I can sort of just live in, somewhere that's just so sort of diverse.
yeah,
And,
I had no idea, so that's cool to
yeah,
learn.
no,
'Cause,
honestly,
let's be honest, what Americans know about Liverpool. It's 4
yeah,
Jews.
well, yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's just be honest. It's like asking, you guys, what do you know about Texas? And I bet it involves a cowboy hat. And I don't know anyone in a cowboy hat that really wears them in Texas, but
Yeah.
it's the way it goes.
My experience of Texas, like I say, was just mainly, like I say, hearing these lovely, Houston accents in the anime and kind of going,
Yeah.
wow, and just being like completely obsessed, you know,
I'm
and
glad
that's
that
where
was your knowledge of us. I'm
it
definitely glad
was.
that was your knowledge of us.
Honestly, I know it sounds so corny, but I was just like I was hooked. I was kind of like that was my kind of little exposure, and that was just mind blowing for me. Just kind of going, wow, I love the sound of these accents, and it just sounds like such a cool city, and being a fan of like Carlin Anderson, who's also from Houston as well. Um,
And the
it's just
Queen Bee.
and Beyonce as well. Yeah, exactly. Hey,
It's actually one of the
so
most diverse cities in the United States, speaking of,
mm,
so that is something good. But I didn't know that about Liverpool. That's really awesome. And to think that it's one of the oldest like Chinese communities outside of China, that does make a lot of sense for it to be a place that your
yeah.
family would have been attracted to and for you to feel very comfortable. And
I mean, my family didn't actually come to Liverpool. They actually settled initially in London.
oh, okay. But then
They
you
well,
found it.
I'm the only one up here. But they initially settled in London, and then they sort of moved to Reading, which is about 40 miles west of London, not too far from Windsor. So in Berkshire. So yeah, and yeah, they settled there until they passed on. So my grandparents lived in Reading for, oh gosh, almost as long as I've been alive. You know, it's yeah, it
Well,
was they
it makes sense maybe that then Liverpool like would make sense for you though, a little further up and the Chinese
yeah,
community and a place
I've
for you
kind
to
of
land.
yeah, I've kind of been, because I am originally from London, but I moved away a long time ago, so now nobody believes I'm from London anymore. But I wanted to kind of integrate myself so much that I just completely sort of threw myself open to the culture of the city and everything. So this is all interlinked with regards to like culture. So
Yeah.
it's not just about sort of foreign cultures, but also sort of domestic cultures as well. Exactly, where you feel that. I think that the theme is like where you feel like you belong.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, I loved, loved being in London, but I think I felt like a northerner at heart. So I think when I got the opportunity to kind of like move away out of London, I kind of just took it because I just thought I kind of want to experience whatever parts of the country are like. And I'm so glad that I did because, again, even though it's not a different country, it's about a different sort of experience. And the beauty of this country is because it's so small, but there's so many different accents, there's so many different sort of, I mean, you can go like 10 miles up the road and it's just completely different. So all of these things are, like I say, culturally, with regards to like ethnicity, but also culturally with regards to within your own country and
Right.
the sorts of people. And they're so welcoming, and I feel like I'm an honorary Scouser now. So, but like I say, anyone who doesn't know me would just think I was, which is really flattering because, like I say, I just really wanted to embrace it.
Good for
As
you.
much as I embrace being mixed race as well, I just really wanted to embrace. And the thing is, actually, it says a lot about this city that a lot of people who aren't from Liverpool, they come to study primarily, and they love it so much that they stay. So
Mm.
that tells you everything you need to know about how sort of much of a draw the city, and it just pulls you in. And yeah,
Like my journey, I kind of went from being a southerner to a northerner. It's a bigger distance because we're a bigger country,
of
but I
course,
get
yeah,
that,
of course, yeah,
Um, I wanted an adventure and I was ready to try out a new place. And within a few days of visiting, we were like, we're moving here. We just
yeah,
knew.
yeah.
So I feel
You
that.
do, don't you? You just get that sort of feeling. You think, I belong here. I can see myself living here. I remember when I was younger and I watched Brooksides, and I just thought to myself, oh my God, I want to live. One day I'm going to live in Liverpool, and that's
You
that was the.
manifested that. You somehow knew
I
that
did. It took me a very long time though. Yeah, it took me a very, very long time though, and a long way round, but I got there in the end.
sliding doors, you got there when you were supposed to. Just
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
I'm a big believer in sliding doors. And you were talking about, your grandparents and their journey and your dad, all of it worked out for you. I mean, think about the miracles that managed for you to happen. If you really think about the different countries of and people landing
Yeah.
in England at just the right time to meet and fall in love and greet you, that's really quite amazing.
Of course, definitely. I mean, like I say, when my grandparents
You're
came
supposed
over,
to be, I mean, it just goes to show you like why how important it is that you're here. You
yeah,
were supposed to be,
definitely, definitely. And like I say, my grandparents were supposed to come over when they did, and my mum was, you know, meant to be born when she was, and if she'd have been born 2 years earlier, she'd have been born in Singapore. So she was only really born here on a technicality. But she considers herself Singaporean as well, even though she wasn't actually born here. So again, it's about how you feel about your own sort of identity and culturally. So, it doesn't matter what other people think, it's how you feel. And like I said, I'm proud to be an honorary Scouser. I wish I was born here. I wish I'd have been born here, but I wasn't. So, the next best thing is to live here. And, I love going back to London and everything like that, but my heart doesn't really feel like it belongs there. Like I say, that's to me, that's just where I was born. But my heart's here.
You're
And
gonna
that's what
stay
it's
there
all
now.
about. Yeah, that's how I feel. And like I say, it's just about embracing the bits of life that you want and make it your own.
I love that.
Yeah,
I can't put a better dot on it than that, Daniel.
yeah,
I really appreciate you diving into this with me. Um, because I think it is important to embrace and know who you are and
mm,
love it and let that fuel you. And yet it doesn't define everything who you are, but it's important about where you've come from because you've obviously it built up your family is who made you. That's very,
yeah,
very clear. And it isn't just the words on the page. It's because they fed you and they told you the stories and they shared the television and the music and the food. All of those things are why it matters. And I think too often people think it's about the label, and the label is secondary to the fact that you were you were raised in what they brought to with them because that was valuable to them. Am I getting that right? I don't
you
want
are, yeah.
to. Okay.
Definitely.
I don't
Everything
want
they
to.
brought with them, yeah,
Yeah.
everything that they brought with them, the mindset. And like I said before, I'm very Eastern, even though I was born and raised here. Like I say, it's just in me because
Yeah.
that's what we were exposed to, that's what we're so used to. But it filters down to our mindset as well and how we think about things and all of that. The fact that I can quite happily eat char kway teow in the morning, things like that. It's just, I always joke and say, "Oh, I'm so Asian" when I sort of talk about certain things, and I just think, but I am, but I literally am because that's just who I am. But that's not to say that I'm sort of denying any other parts of me or anything like that. But
No,
it's just what I was normally used to. That's all.
I
But
think it's just you love all parts of yourself and all parts
yeah,
of your family. And frankly, you wouldn't be here without all of those parts.
no,
Like I'm saying,
exactly.
the sliding doors. You wouldn't be British if all those other parts hadn't come together, right?
No,
Like that's how it
exactly.
all happens. So I think it's lovely. And I really, like I said, I know too often that this is like, the third rail and we don't want to touch it. But I think what we've managed to do is have a very positive conversation about your experiences. And I think it would be lovely in the not too far off future if we do that again, because I think it's great for people to hear more. And we mentioned in a previous conversation that what I've been trying to do, especially in the last 5 to 6 years of my life, is just listen more. That I'm learning how much I didn't know, and the only way to address that is to listen and learn. And I'm glad for you to help as my friend me learn more. Is there anything else you want to say before we say goodbye?
Just that I've always been proud of being mixed race, and I just love having all of those cultures to and to sort of call upon. And I think that it should be more of a prominent sort of thing to sort of be able to kind of go, I'm proud of this,
Yeah.
you know. I'm actually really, really proud of this. And like I said before, I've only had really, really good experiences. So I can't really say that I've had a really, really bad time with it. But I love embracing all of it. I absolutely do.
Well, be prepared when I finally get to come to visit you to have lots of good food for me, like from everywhere. Because
Oh gosh, yeah, I'll
I'm
take you to
ready.
all the best places in
Yes.
Chinatown. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, as always, I appreciate you. And I appreciate you guys tuning in to listen to Daniel and I talk. I think this is an important conversation, and I appreciate your time. And if you enjoyed the show, I hope you will come back and visit us. And if you really enjoyed it, push the subscribe button. I'm supposed to say that. Anyways, thank you very much, and y'all have a great day. Bye.